Tailored games, yeah. So, new title, great. So, welcome again to Playpublik, Gabe Smedresman. I'm really happy that you could make it after we've had a great time at URGO last year, and now we get a talk from you, which is something new, which is great. Gabe is a very, very diverse person, I think, doing games in the subway with photographs, also weird props and fictions, but also you've been involved in doing Facebook games and have a project about woodcut maps, which is really interesting. So I think Gabe is a very good speaker to give some insight into how to use real-world data in games, and I'm looking very much forward to your talks, So here's the mic.
Thanks, Sebastian. It's awesome to be here. Hi, I'm Gabe. Before I start, I just kind of wanted to get a sense of who's here. Are you are you mostly game if you're a designer, just raise your hand to let me know.
They're all behind the pillar.
All the designers are staying hidden. Hi. Yeah, and I guess everyone else here, what's your relationship with games? What brings you to Playpublik? You're just a fan or a writer, or anyone want to volunteer? Sorry? You. What brings you here? Are you a fan or a writer, or just wandered in? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Okay. The random sample is complete. I won't subject anyone else to that. Sorry. So I'm Gabe. I'm a game designer, and one of the things that's a really common thread in what I do is I make games that use real-world data. So I'll get into what that is, but I guess I just wanted to start by saying I think one of the things that's so special about festivals like Playpublik and URGO and Come Out and Play is that they use real places in games. So it's not just a game that's sort of isolated in its own perfect world. You know, if you build something for a computer, you can design everything perfectly. But I think what we do, and what brings us in common, all the designers here, is that we make games for real places that draw upon all of the richness that is, Alexanderplatz, which is the game I'm running later, or any number of places here. And we use that richness of places in the real world that have stories, that have histories, that have architectural details, and we use those to inform our games and make the games more meaningful because they tie into what's already there. And also, through the games, we gain a deeper understanding of the place and a deeper understanding of what these places and histories are around us. So both the games can provide a window into the places around us, and the places can make our games better. And I think that, what I'm going to go through in this talk is a number of other examples of what I've worked on, raising the question of what else can we use besides places that can both make our games richer by tying in other examples of the data around us, and also use games to give us a deeper understanding of this kind of data that surrounds us and is deeply personal. And I think ultimately, just like how place-based games are richer because they use real places, we can make better, more personal, more meaningful games if we use the data that if we use our own personal data in them, and also through games we can gain a deeper understanding of our own personal data. So I'll start with a sort of example. Also, I'll kind of go from global data. I'll start with Twitter, which is global data, and I'll sort of go into more personal data as I go on. And I'll make sure to leave time for some questions and participation at the end. So I guess the first game I wanted to share was a project called Pre-tweeting that I worked on in 2009. What pre-tweeting is a game based on Twitter, where I ran a computer server and would download and would in real time monitor Twitter for every word in the English language and assign that word a price based on how often people were speaking it in real time. So you could quickly realize certain words like the I think you can see this is an example of the leaderboard of the highest valued words. All of the really common words in the English language were way up there in the top. But every word was monitored, and you could buy and sell them. So while the game design of pre-tweeting was all about the market, it's just straightforward stock trading game. You can kind of similar examples to prediction markets. What it really was giving you a deeper understanding of current events. So events would happen. You would start to see events like iPod. Words like iPod would spike at the launch of a new iPod, whereas other words were much more predictable. You kind of quickly got a sense also of that certain words, each word would have its own pattern. Words like dinner would spike around dinner time. Words like lunch would spike around lunchtime. Words like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday would each have weekly spikes. Yeah. So,
I'm just really curious if you have a theory as to why LOL was spiking.
That I wonder. That's a all times are in PSD, so I'd say that was about 9 p.m. I suppose 9 p.m. is the funniest time of the day. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Peak drinking plus twittering time. I guess as it gets later, you stop tweeting. So I think this isn't so much personal data, but it's more zeitgeist data. What's going on around you, and through this game, you sort of grappled with what was around you. People started. The advanced play would involve, because the way to win the game is trying to predict what words are going to be spoken, are going to peak before they do. One of the things I realized with this game is that Twitter is, this is common knowledge, but Twitter is by far the fastest information dissemination mechanism existing. I tried adding other ways to research what words to buy, things like New York Times feed or Google search, but basically the only way to be faster than Twitter is to have advanced knowledge. So this was pre-tweeting. It was really fun. I'm trying to see if there's any other. Yeah, the biggest sort of coup of pre-tweeting was when Gmail went down. Everyone on Twitter exploded with that, and one person just won massively when they pre-tweeted that as soon as they saw that Gmail was down, knowing that it would be a big deal. So the next game I guess I wanted to share was something I worked on before that, called Turf. So this was the sort of game that really got me into location-based gaming as a start. It started out as a game I ran in college while I was still in college. This game is a variant of Risk, where we'd assign each area of the college campus a territory. Actually, I can pull up the original. So this was the original game at college campuses, so you can see actually how the game went down. This will look familiar to you. Basically, I assigned each area of, this was the freshman quad of Yale, a region, much like a Risk board, and divided the students into teams. So a few hundred students per team. Each building was a freshman dorm, but the entire school could participate. This game was a really amazing surprise hit. I kind of launched it with no marketing whatsoever, and within 10 days, about 60% of Yale campus was playing. And I think what was so special about it was, this actually was pretty special in that it incorporated fully two aspects of real world, data isn't the right word, but two real world connections. One was the location. this isn't a risk board. This is a board of a real place. And the game gains this immediate extra value because instead of being an abstract territory, you can recognize every place on this map. So when Green Team was down to its very last territory, and that territory corresponds to the actual dorm building, that team fought harder to defend that area than any other area on the map. And I'll note this game wasn't location based. There was no GPS, no mobile phones. It was purely a map, and it's purely played over the web. So just by taking this map and having it represent real places, the game gained this extra meaning. And so whereas some people just to fill out the rules, you had a sort of whole day to make your moves, and everyone, this game relied a lot on a coordination outside of the game because in the way to win, you needed to come up with a good risk strategy, but you also needed to get that strategy out to as many students as you can. And so recruitment was a key part of this game, and that's part of why it was so successful. So some people played this game because they really liked Risk, and they just really wanted to strategize. But other people got into it purely because they cared about the teams. And so that was the other aspect of this game that tied into a real-world connection, which was the affiliation groups. I don't know, some colleges are better about this than others, but Yale has a very strong affiliation with your dorm building. People do recycling contests, sports, even amateur sports are super competitive because of this college versus college competition. And by having the game not divide people arbitrarily into your red team, your blue team, your yellow team, but instead assigning teams based on existing real-world affiliation groups, this game was instantly seized upon that real-world energy that people cared about before the game, they cared about during the game, and they cared about after the game to instantly gain a following. So people maybe didn't care about the Risk game at all, but they would play because they wanted to support their college. So I think that's one of the reasons why this was so successful. Apart from the raw game dynamics, and by borrowing heavily from Risk, I can't claim any responsibility for the good design of the game. But I think what made it so successful was the fact that it tied into those real world connections. And I'll add that so we ended up raising some funding and launching this at other schools, and as you can see, we spent most of that making the graphics a lot nicer. But that wasn't where we should have spent it. It turns out, we made the graphics a lot nicer, but as we evolved the game towards being a more real-time, move anytime you want, it sort of went away from Risk and more towards soccer or a game where more precise location mattered. And this was a real lesson for me, which is that just making the game more precise, more granular in terms of the location data doesn't necessarily make it better and doesn't necessarily make it more meaningful. So we kind of made it worse a bit by evolving it. That was fun. So this is whereas pre-tweeting was sort of global data that everyone shares, and this is a kind of local affiliation groups and local maps that matter to shared within a specific area. What I sort of moved on to after that was making games that are more based on personal data, where the game's different for every person who plays it. So the first of these is called Crazy Boat. I made this game for Facebook. We got a lot of people to say really nice things about it, which was awesome. I think the full quote from this Forbes article was weird. Oh, no, the New York Times, the Forbes article, was weird, witty, and compelling, like Farmville on peyote. So, I was proud of that. The game basically was about cleaning up the Pacific trash vortex, which, if you don't know, is a whirling maelstrom of disintegrated plastic that is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. everything that gets dumped into the ocean ends up into one of these vortexes just due to the currents. And this is 2 times the size of the state of Texas, or probably, I think Texas is about the size of France. So 2 times the country of France, the size of this vortex. So the game was about cleaning up that vortex. I think, yeah, this is the map. This is the location of the vortex, and this is the West Coast. About joining with a group of your Facebook friends and cleaning up the trash vortex. How it tied into personal data was when you logged in with Facebook, we would look at what you'd posted to Facebook and assign it tags. So if you had, if you posted a lot about forestry and the environment, we'd give you the forest ranger tag. If you posted a lot about war, we'd give you the soldier tag. About technology, we'd give you the engineer tag. So what we ended up having, I'll just reload this to stop it from refreshing. What you ended up having was a player profile that ideally reflects your actual personality. We did this through a relatively simple algorithm where we mostly just searched for text tags. So for the hacker, we searched for like computers, Linux, server, web, and the more you said words like that, if you reached a threshold, we'd assign you the hacker skill. So pretty basic technology, but even this gives you a lot more personal relevance to these characters. What we went for was not to have a game where you just had to get 3 of your friends on board your boat. We wanted you to have to find your friends based on who they actually were. And so this is the game. We sort of yeah. It was sort of mixed. I'd say we didn't get it 100% right. Part because one of the things you get when you start doing this is you start running into when you start having games that pull in real world data, but then you also have that real world information become relevant to the game. You run into issues where what if they do something in the game that conflicts with the data you're pulling in. So for instance, based on those hacker scientist skills, we gave you an initial value for those three things over there. One was your fighting skill, one was your intelligence, and one was your social skill. But over the course of the game, you could also boost those skills. So if my friend Tom Brow was on my boat and I had him do all the fighting for the ship, he would build up his strength skill. So you get this situation where if his real life posts say he's super smart and a great engineer and super suave, but his in-game actions say he's like a soldier and really buff, you start to get a conflict between the real-world personality that you're trying to pull in and this fictional personality that maybe you go to games to try and build a fictional character for yourself. And so, I mean, that's a tension. We encountered this with this, and I don't think we entirely... The way we resolved it was we just said you started with a certain stats based on your real-world posts, but as you played, you could change that. I don't think we completely resolved it. But maybe in the future. Part of the reason why it was problematic was that you'd also get new posts in real time. So if in-game actions were all about being a soldier, but his posts continued to be about technology, you had this conflict. So I guess finally I wanted to share a game in progress that I'm working on. I haven't shared any of this publicly, so you're getting the completely unpolished material from a new game that I'm working on. This is the game that works on the most personal data I've worked on yet, your email. So when you log into the game's called Tower of Memory, and it's all about past relationships and reliving the loss of your past relationships and how that's how life goes, and it's really sad. but it's how it goes, and we all just have to deal. So this is a really clearly like personal theme for a game, and what I wanted to do was make it personal for everyone by using your actual relationships from your life in this. So you sign in with your email, and we basically go through, and you're building this tower with people who are close to you, and the game starts at the start of your email history and continues to the end of your email history, and those people who are close to you at various parts of your life build a tower with you, and eventually, as they drift away from you in your email history, they start to wander away from your tower in the game, and you need to pull them back, because as they build in your tower, they level up. So the players, the people in your email history who are closest to you personally, are also the most powerful builders, so the people you want to keep. And that's the kind of mechanic I wanted to go for, was that act, that physical game act of these people who their time has passed and they're starting to leave, and you want to keep them, but you can't. And eventually you just have to let them go. I've got nothing of the game to show you, but I do have this preliminary data that I've been starting to build. And this is the first one. So this is what I've been using to build the game, and it is basically you gather the whole email box, you deduplicate by person, and you start to rank them. And so what I'm doing here is ranking people by the dramaticness of the relationship, meaning how intense the relationship was, in terms of that the top bars are the intensity of my email contact, where if they reach the top, it means I was emailing the most in that time of anyone else at that time. But also the briefness, because my mom is way down there, is a pretty even high level of contact throughout the entire life. That's not very interesting. If for this game I wanted to have the people experience that loss, the loss of a relationship, I need to go for the relationships that spiked and then got lost. So this is that sort of chart for each person, and this is sort of a preliminary casting. So what the game does, because it's supposed to be a mobile game, so there's limited screen space, what we've got to do is take that completely unpredictable data that could be different for anyone who would log in, and convert it, and this is the challenge with real data, convert it to convert the data into a game design and level design, a basic dynamic level design that has the same sort of difficulty characteristics for anyone who would log in. So what I ended up doing for this is doing a sort of ranking where at most we'd have 6 people on screen at any given time, because you have more than that, and it just, given the screen space, there's too many people, and try and pick the most relevant relationships for the entire course of the history that would also limit it to 6 people. So this is a preliminary casting, and that's all I've got to show. But this process this is like kind of the key process for games in real-world data. It's you can't just build a game, and you can't just design the levels from scratch, and sort of when you publish the game, it goes gold and it's it. Any game that uses real-world data is going to do something like this, where it has some kind of algorithm that converts the messy stuff from your email box, from map, from a Twitter feed, converts it from its kind of real-life form into a form that's playable as a game. So I guess just like to sort of finish up, I just think the common thread of all these, again, is just like how we're doing with places in Playpublik and other festivals, where we're taking a real-world place and we're using it in a game to make the game more meaningful to us, and also use that game as a window into the place, I think we can use all of these kinds of personal data to make games more personal, more meaningful individually to each player, not just the same package for everyone, and also give people a deeper understanding of these aspects of their life through gameplay. So as you're making your games, and you're making place, what can you use? I guess what I'd ask is what can you use? What aspects of your player's life can you use to make the game more meaningful and personal to them? So that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to chat now.
So yeah, we do have time for questions. Are there any? So I have a question. I thought it was really interesting that you sort of talked about how data and places are kind of the same thing for you, or like on the same level of including things into the design process. And when I look at this, it was just really interesting that you sort of data is something you need to process, you need to format to make it playable. But when you use places, in our experience, often you can use a place as a kind of a backdrop, or as a scenery, or as sort of a stage which sets sort of an atmosphere or a situation, and then you bring something in it that goes into a relationship with the game, but doesn't necessarily have to be made playable in that way. So I was wondering if you could see using email in that way as maybe if you sort of follow that analogy to places as more of a place, or maybe you're doing that. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. I feel like there are two ways to use. There are two ways to use, or many ways, but among the many ways to use this sort of information around us, you can use it aesthetically to influence, your experience of a game, and you can use it mechanically to influence, the game mechanics and basically level design. So there's and I've always been really interested in both. So I'd say, for this game, I haven't quite gotten to that level yet, but one of the things I've thought about is, not just connecting with email, but connecting with Facebook so I can pull in profile pictures. At that point, if you're building a tower and you start to pull in imagery from these people from Facebook and show it either in the rooms you're building or sort of floating ghost-like in the background, that would be to also use this this email information in a way to affect your experience. And similarly in places, like part of the power of places is just running at a place, and then the aesthetic properties. I'd say generally what's drawn me to place more is more the level design of a place, like the idea of using a courtyard as like a Tony Hawk level for skateboarding or something. And that's where it's not really so much about using the place as a backdrop, but using it as a level. And I think I think part of what's so cool about real world places is you kind of need to take everything and just you need to respond to what the place offers to you, both visually and mechanically. If you designed it as like a game to play at a circus, you'd have to both use the actual ring design as a circus, but if you made it like a film noir themed game, like something wouldn't fit. So you need to respond to everything, and I guess I kind of aspire to that too with this stuff.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I'm not a gamer that when I look at this, I understand it as really fascinating data visualization. Could you tell us a bit more about how we actually play?
Oh. Well, that's kind of the part I haven't figured out yet. I mean, this is the data visualization. This is basically my research as I'm starting, and also as I figure out this algorithm. This is, by far the most processing I've had to do. We started to do some of this though with the web, with the map stuff. But it wasn't nearly this hard. Like with the turf game, we would download OpenStreetMaps data, and we'd process it to figure out, okay, these are the roads, these are the parks. How can we use this to build a gameplay map? And what we found was actually really hard to take that that map data and reliably make a fun risk. Like, turns out risk maps are very, very carefully designed, just in terms of number of connections and territories. They're these things that have a lot of very strict constraints, and we found it impossible to take an arbitrary map of anywhere in the world and build like a well-designed risk board out of it. Like, in order to do that, we would need to change so much about the map that it would be very hard to relate. So with this is kind of the first time where I think the data is sort of fungible enough. You know, there are all these people in your email boxes, and no one will really, as long as you don't miss a few key people, you can include some and leave others. So you have a lot of playing room within this email data to mess around with it, to tweak it, and in the other end of the funnel and algorithm, come up with a playable level, essentially. So I've been doing a lot more visualization with this, just because I've needed to in order to figure out that process. The game design is actually proving pretty challenging, just because it's really easy to figure out games that don't sound any fun, and so I'm still working on that. The kind of latest thing I'm thinking is basically what I try and do with this is like just boil it down to proven mechanics, and just use this data as a level design. That's sort of why I'm falling back to this instead of trying something completely different. So what I'm sort of falling back to this is maybe some kind of Tetris style gameplay where you're building a tower. There are rooms that come in, and you need to put the rooms in the right place, but completely incomplete. Sorry, that's not a very satisfactory answer. Anyone else? All right.
Maybe we can actually collect questions also, and then I think it'd be interesting to go over to your talk and see what the relation actually to your approach is, and then see if there's any more questions.
Sure. Is your talk right now?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to run a conversation.
Yeah. When
it's at 5:30.
At 5:30. Okay. So, thank you very much. That was really interesting.